Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. Pastor Joel lifted his hand like a gavel. Lena flinched. I'm Mara, 27, and I stepped between them. He moved closer. I could feel the breath shift. Confess, he said, voice calm and cold. I kept my eyes on him and waited. She asked about options, I said, low and clear. He looked past me toward the front row. Faces tilted down but ears leaned hard. She wants to deletus the fetus, he announced. The word snapped through the room like wire. Lena gripped my wrist and didn't blink. Her nails bit until I felt a pulse. Joel's mouth formed a sorrowful shape that sold blame. Sin can be forgiven, he told the rows. I heard something lock inside me. Forgiveness isn't your leash, I said, stepping closer. A deacon stood up and blocked my shoulder. I slid left and he mirrored me fast. Lena whispered please without sound in my direction. I chose loud over polite. Private counsel means private, I said, palms open. Joel lifted the microphone like a promise. Correction protects the flock, he said, eyes bright. I saw his gaze bounce to the cameras. He wanted a spectacle and a scalp. Lena tugged my sleeve once and froze. Her breathing hitched like a stalled engine. Do not touch her, I told the deacon. He lowered his hands but planted his feet. Pressure built in my throat like heat. Call your mother, Joel told Lena without blinking. Lena shut her eyes and shook her head. Murmurs crawled along the pews and gathered weight. He savored it like a practiced host. I pictured his study and a locked drawer. You love control more than souls, I said, steady. He smiled with pity and it felt rehearsed. We will pray right now, he said, lifting again. People stood because that was the script. I stayed seated and broke it. Joel walked down from the platform with confidence. He stopped an arm's length away and waited. Confess and receive support, he told Lena. Lena stared at his shoes and swallowed air. My phone buzzed and kept buzzing. Unknown number flashed and vanished, then returned. I answered and cupped the speaker tight. Do not let him call home, a voice said. Who is this? I asked with my jaw locked. Her brother, he breathed, and the line cracked. Meet me after service, the brother said, hushed. He records the sessions and scares parents. My scalp tingled and the floor tilted. Prove it, I said without looking at Joel. Storage units do not lie, he answered. I hung up and met Lena's stare. Her pupils were glassy and hard as stones. We are leaving now, I told the room. Joel raised his hand as if to bless. 2 ushers stepped to block the aisle. Step aside, I said, tone flat and final. One cleared his throat and moved a fraction. Sit, Joel urged the crowd like an order. A woman obeyed and then regretted it. I took that regret as permission. We walked down the aisle and did not slow. Feet scuffed behind us with restless purpose. At the doors, an usher reached for Lena's elbow. I caught his wrist and held it long. He blinked first and let go. Outside the glass, the lot looked wide open. I checked the exits and counted 2. Rain started as if on cue and quick. Not enough to change plans yet. Enough to hide a tail if needed. Behind us, the doors thudded and locked again. A click rolled through the frame like a threat. Lena looked back once and then forward. We run to the car, I said. On 3, she whispered, and the sky answered. We burst through the doors and sprinted for the lot. Locks clacked behind us like teeth. Lena slipped once and caught herself on my sleeve. 2 men fanned out from the entry. My keys slid in the wrong direction. Stop right there, one lifted a hand without touching. Return inside and we resolved this quietly. Lena shook her head so hard her braid whipped. Quiet for who? I asked with my palm up. He shifted his weight and glanced at the camera. I cut left and dragged Lena toward the curb. The nearest man followed and reached for her phone. Church property, he muttered and grabbed air. She tucked it down her jacket and kept moving. His jaw worked like he tasted metal. We reached my car and I jammed the door open. Engine caught on the second try and roared. A sedan rolled across the exit and paused. I chose the far lane and gunned it. The sedan nudged forward and dared me. I jerked the wheel and cut around the bumper. A mirror scraped something unseen and shrieked. Lena braced both hands on the dash. Seatbelt, I blurted as we shot clear. In the side glass, 2 figures started running. My phone lit up and buzzed in my cup holder. Unknown again, I hit speaker and stared ahead. Left at the next light, then industrial, the voice said. Why? I asked and checked the following lane. They log plates at the main exit. I swallowed and did exactly that. A van eased behind us at a casual pace. Different street now, he urged through static. Keep it messy or they'll box you. Lena pressed her heel against the floorboard. We hit a line of cars at a long light. The van rolled into the other lane and idled. Get out and walk, Lena whispered, eyes wide. Not yet, I said and watched the cross street. A delivery truck blocked their view for 3 beats. I cut right through a gas station entry and looped. The van tried to follow and misjudged the curb. Rubber bumped and they lost a second. We shot past the car wash and took an alley. I killed my lights and counted to 5. Lena's screen flashed a name we both recognized. Her mother, the phone trembled in her grip. Answer, I said, though I braced for impact. Where are you? Came through, crisp and furious. Lena stared at me and mouthed aside. Safe, she managed, voice thin but steady. Come back now, snapped the voice with zero breath. Pastor wants to help and pray. Lena's throat bobbed and she looked at the dash. She ended the call and clutched the phone hard. Unknown buzzed again before we could exhale. New meeting point, the brother said over wind. Not the old place, he moved on you. I felt something drop through my ribs and settle. Where? I asked, and I was already turning. Freight yard on Harlan, far edge by the fence. Why there? I asked out of habit. Too loud to record clean, he replied and paused. And they will hesitate to follow that deep. Lena nodded once like a contract signed. I pulled back onto the street and merged. The van reappeared 2 blocks behind us. Cut through the school loop and ditched them. His tone sharpened and I obeyed without flair. We clipped a speed bump and stayed moving. At the loop a minivan blocked the far exit. I reversed hard and tires chirped against wet paint. A teenager on a bike stared and blinked twice. The van swerved in late and overshot. I took the opening and punched it. Lena breathed in then out, counting under her breath. We are okay, I told her and kept scanning. I knew that sentence might expire in seconds. We passed a patrol car and neither of us blinked. The van chose a different turn and faded. Silence filled the car for a fragile moment. I heard my heart beat where the engine used to be. Why would he move the spot? Lena asked. Because someone warned him, I said, and it hurt. Trusted turned into a moving target. The freight yard rose ahead like a maze. Trucks grumbled on low gears behind high fencing. I killed the radio and checked the mirrors again. No familiar van, only shadows and tail lights. We rolled toward the far corner and waited. A figure stepped from behind a stack of pallets, hands up. Lena stiffened and leaned into me just enough. Phones off and inside the glove box, the figure whispered. We did it fast without breaking eye contact. Trucks growled nearby and swallowed our voices. He pulled his hood back and scanned the fence line. 2 blocks clear, he murmured and checked my tires. Were you tailed? He asked with a quick glance. Not now, I answered and kept 1 foot ready. He nodded once and motioned deeper into cover. Pastor flagged your plates to a volunteer, he said. Different car next time or you lose the lead. I tasted adrenaline and something close to anger. Lena folded her arms tight and stayed silent. Where's the proof? I asked with my chin up. He held out a key on a grimy lanyard. Locker near the foreman office, he said, barely above noise. Numbers changed this morning after a call from her house. Lena flinched like the word cut through cartilage. He met her eyes and let the silence stand. We move now, I said and pocketed the key. We crossed between trailers and kept to shadows. A forklift beeped and then drowned out everything else. He pointed to a steel door with taped digits. My throat tightened as I fit the key. Inside the locker was a shoebox with labels. No dust, no hesitation, fresh hands had been here. I lifted the lid and saw tiny recorders stacked. Each one tagged with initials and dates. Lena reached in and pulled one free. She tapped play and froze at the first voice. Not her, another girl, desperate and cornered. A male voice coached answers like a script. Different questions, same trap, same pressure. The recording clicked off with a low hum. Keep going, the brother urged with a tilt. I slipped a second device into my jacket. A third held a file name that made my gut drop. A familiar abbreviation that belonged to me. Lena touched my sleeve and waited for courage. I pressed play and heard my own halting cadence. The room seemed to tighten around my ribs. He prompted me toward a response that wasn't mine. He repeated my words back, cleaner and colder. I thumbed stop and stared at the metal wall. A freight horn blasted and gave me cover to think. He watched me hold it together by force. "You see the pattern?" he asked without triumph. I nodded because anything else would crack me. We were beyond doubt and well into damage. Bootsteps echoed out. Zayden paused near the corner. 3 sets, maybe 4, too synchronized for coincidence. Lena pocketed the device she had claimed. I shut the box and slid it back. We stepped out together and stayed small. A man in a reflective vest looked our way. He tapped his ear and spoke into a clip. The brother drifted right and broke our cluster. I moved left with Lena and kept walking. The vest turned and paced toward the office. "Keep casual," the brother mouthed as trucks rumbled by. We rounded a stack and picked up speed. A whistle cut through the racket like a blade. 2 shapes peeled from a pickup and closed distance. My hands went hot as I planned angles. The first one addressed Lena by full name. His tone was bright and false like a TV host. "Your mother wants you at home right now." Lena's eyes flashed and then went flat. "Mom can meet me later," she answered, voice edged. He tried a warm smile and stepped closer. His partner blocked the aisle with a practice shift. "Let's not make a scene," the smiler suggested. I laughed once and it surprised even me. "We are already the scene," I told him. The brother appeared behind them with a clipboard. "Inspection," he announced and didn't break stride. Both men hesitated and glanced at the pickup. He thrust the clipboard into the taller one's chest. "Sign for the rail yard sweep," he insisted. They faltered just long enough to matter. We slid past and cut down a narrow lane. The brother peeled off and pointed toward a gate. I pushed through with Lena at my shoulder. Radio chatter spiked behind us and then faded. At the fence line, he handed me a flash drive. "Backup of the worst files," he said, eyes hard. "Not everything, enough to start a fire." I slid it into my sock and felt steadier. He glanced at the horizon like a clock. "Use burner accounts and blur voices," he warned. "They will claim editing and call you vengeful." I let that sink in like a mark on skin. Lena exhaled and nodded at the same time. We were aligning whether we liked it or not. Sirens wailed somewhere beyond the warehouses and stopped. The brother tensed and checked the lot again. "Time to split," he said, all business and worry. "Go opposite directions and regroup later tonight." He turned and melted into freight noise. We reached the car and killed every light. I gripped the wheel until my joints popped. "Do we dump our phones?" Lena asked in a whisper. "Not yet," I answered and cracked the window. I listened for anything that didn't belong. Nothing obvious, just machinery and distant horns. I powered on my screen and opened settings. Lena mirrored me and watched my hands closely. We disabled location services and hard-locked backups. It felt like pulling our names off a door. "Next step," she asked with her jaw tight. "Verify the files on a clean laptop," I said. "And push proof to places that won't fold." Her mouth twitched like a decision forming. I knew that look from earlier battles. A pickup idled 2 rows over and lingered. I eased the car into motion without brake lights. The pickup stayed put and did not follow. We crept toward the back exit and waited. A train clattered by and gave us cover. We rolled out with the noise and didn't speak. The city opened like a board filled with traps. Every turn felt like a test of nerve. I took the third option at every fork. Lena finally unclenched and stared ahead. "We are not going back," she whispered, not asking. "Not while he holds those tapes," I answered. Her hands loosened and then tightened again. "We take his leverage and flip it," she said. That was the moment I knew we would. I slid the flash drive into a borrowed laptop, heartbeat steady. Lena kept watch near the entrance with her hood up. A timer ticked on the screen while files unpacked. My palms dried themselves against my jeans. Someone coughed behind a row and didn't leave. I opened the first clip and checked the waveform. Distortion filter on, identifiers blurred, timestamps visible. Lena leaned in and tapped the spacebar twice. Her jaw worked while we listened to a stranger beg. I felt a bruise forming where Faith used to sit. "We cut names and keep dates," I said, focused. She nodded and dragged the slider to a peak. A door beeped somewhere and then closed hard. I saved versions to 3 folders with different labels. Insurance matters when men worship power. Unknown number flashed again across my screen. I muted the laptop and answered with one word. New account only, the brother whispered over static. Assume your logins are compromised. My spine lifted like a warning had teeth. I created burner emails with nothing personal inside. Lena typed faster than I could think. Shared drive, encrypted archive, passphrase scrawled on a napkin. We deleted the note after each of us repeated it. I felt almost clever and also exposed. A young usher walked in and scanned the tables. His eyes skimmed AC. Ross faces and bounced back. He spotted us and started over with a smile. Lena reached for her bag without standing. I closed the lid and counted to 3. Hey, funny running into you here, he hovered. Looking for community resources, my tone was flat. Pastor wants to help if you're feeling lost. Lena pulled her sleeve down and studied the floor. The usher shifted like his feet burned. Got any flyers? I asked with a small shrug. He laughed too loud and glanced at the counter. Let's talk outside where it's quieter. I held his gaze long enough to sour the grin. He checked his phone and stalled. A librarian appeared near the copier with crossed arms. Keep conversations brief, she said, voice even and tired. The usher pocketed his phone and tried polite again. I cut him off with 3 simple words. We're doing research, goodbye. He backed away and mouthed something about prayer. The librarian watched him leave and then watched me. You two okay? She asked without judgment. We will be, I answered, which felt half honest. I reopened the laptop and breathed through the shake. We queued the worst recordings for upload. Not all just enough to break a dam. Lena slowed her breathing and read out captions. Short, specific, verifiable, no rumors. I built a thread that couldn't be hand-waved. The progress bar crawled and then froze. Connection error pulsed like a heartbeat. Lena looked at the router and then back. I toggled networks and lost 2 minutes. When it returned, the queue doubled. Backup route, she whispered and pointed at her phone. Her thumbs moved like a code she already knew. Hotspot live new IP, fresh tunnel. The files jumped forward and grabbed bandwidth. I felt relief start to climb the ladder. A man in work boots entered and scanned the floor. Different from the usher, he carried purpose, not politeness. He spotted us and touched the brim of his cap. Car lights on in the lot, he announced to everyone. Nobody moved, but Lena did. We stood together and pretended to head for the door. I left the laptop uploading under a closed jacket. Lena walked 5 steps behind me and cut right. The man watched my hands and not hers. She slipped past the stacks and circled back. I met him near the vestibule and held my ground. Which car? I asked with a blank face. Black compact by the second row, he answered. Not mine, I said and waited him out. He frowned and checked a slip of paper. Behind him, Lena reseated herself at our table. She removed the jacket and watched the bar climb. I asked the man if the plate was mine. He read numbers that did not match. I thanked him and walked him to the door. When I turned, 2 messages flashed on the screen. Incoming from the brother with a single line. Do not go home tonight. A second message from a reporter I barely knew. Call now if you have proof. We looked at each other and didn't celebrate. Lena handed me a cheap headset without speaking. I dialed the number and kept my voice low. I have recordings of coerced confessions. Silence stretched, then curiosity sharpened. Send a sample and a checklist of sources. The reporter's tone stayed calm and direct. 3 outlets will run it if it checks out. I scanned the room while I pressed send. My stomach rolled as if predicting impact. We attached 1 clip with dates uncut. Faces removed, voices bent, sequence intact. Lena drafted a timeline with nothing fancy. We added witness initials and 2 locations. I hit transmit and watched the status spin. The cue finished and chimed through the speakers. Lena flinched and then laughed once at the noise. We wiped the laptop and pulled the drive. The librarian raised an eyebrow as we packed. Thanks, I said, and I meant more than manners. Outside, rain started again and dotted my sleeves. I checked the cars and chose a path behind bushes. A sedan idled across the street with lights off. I tasted copper and forced my pace casual. Lena slipped beside me and matched my stride. My phone vibrated and showed 3 new emails. 2 from small blogs, 1 from the bigger outlet. Received verifying stay reachable. I closed the screen and locked it twice. Something irreversible had just begun. My inbox pinged again, subject line read urgent verification request. Lena watched my face and tightened her grip. Send a longer sample, the reporter wrote with a timestamp. 10 seconds won't survive legal. I felt the countdown start in my chest. I clipped a minute with 3 separate patterns. Questions leading, answers coached, threats dressed as care. Lena hovered over my shoulder and breathed through it. Blur deeper, she whispered and tapped the waveform. We layered noise until words still cut. Before I hit send, a new text appeared. Private number, short and cocky like a dare. Return church property or we involve law. I showed Lena and watched her jaw set. They're bluffing unless we blink, she said. I hit transmit and opened a new thread. 3 outlets copied, 1 attorney copied blind. We listed times, initials, and 2 safe locations. No opinions, only verifiable steps and contact points. I pressed enter and tasted metal anyway. A knock rattled the motel door twice. Lena froze mid-breath and pointed to the peephole. A woman stood there with a tote and frown. Front desk, leak from the ceiling above you. Her voice tried casual and landed wrong. I motioned Lena away and cracked the door. A whiff of laundry soap hit, then cologne. A shoe wedged the gap before I reacted. The woman smiled with nothing friendly behind it. 2 men flanked the hallway and pretended bored. Quick inspection, she chirped and leaned forward. I pushed hard and met unmoving resistance. Not a good time, I answered and kept pressure. 1 minute, she insisted and shifted her weight. Something clicked inside me and changed the rules. I let the door open an inch wider. Then I slammed it into the shoe with everything. The woman yelped and stumbled back 2 steps. Lena slid the bolt while I braced the frame. Knuckles pounded twice and stopped. My phone buzzed with the brother's name. Packet traveling, expect pushback within the hour. I told him about the door and the shoe. He swore under his breath and spoke fast. Check out now, new room through the laundry. We grabbed everything we actually needed and moved. Back staircase, service corridor, narrow escape routes only. A cart blocked the last turn like a dare. Lena shoved it hard and cleared a path. No one shouted, which worried me more. Out the side exit, we slipped into the lot. A pickup idled near the dumpster with no plates. I felt eyes from inside, heavy and patient. We cut the opposite way and reached the street. My pulse synced with the passing traffic. A call from the reporter came through right then. Audio matches 2 other sources, her voice steady. We go live if you confirm 1 detail. I stepped into a recessed doorway and listened. What detail? I asked with my throat dry. Were minors recorded without consent? She asked, careful. Yes, I answered, and the world tilted slightly. Then we run it by morning unless barred. She paused, then added a final warning. Expect smear tactics within minutes. Lena tugged my sleeve and pointed across. Her mother stood by a sedan with folded arms. A familiar deacon lingered near the trunk and watched. Come home now, her mother called, voice cracking. Lena's face hardened like a door slamming shut. We can talk later, Lena answered without moving closer. Not with him, she added and nodded at the deacon. The deacon lifted his hands and attempted gentle. This path will ruin reputations, he murmured. Good, I said, and I meant it. Her mother's gaze landed on me like blame. You dragged her into this chaos, she accused. Lena stepped in front of me and didn't shake. No one dragged me, she said, firm and final. The deacon reached for his phone and turned away. A police cruiser rolled to the corner and paused. The deacon waved like he'd been expecting friends. My stomach clenched and my feet wanted flight. Lena exhaled once and took my hand. We walked toward the crosswalk like we owned it. The cruiser window slid down and a voice called. Are you 2 the ones posting church tapes? I stopped just short of the curb and answered. We're the ones reporting evidence of abuse. He stared long enough that I counted heartbeats. Anyone threatening you tonight? The officer asked. The deacon froze and lowered his phone slowly. Yes, I said, clear enough to cross the street. I pointed at the motel in the lot. The officer's eyes moved and measured. Wait here, he ordered and pulled to the curb. He stepped out and spoke to the deacon first. Her mother watched him like a drowning person. Lena squeezed my hand until my knuckles pressed white. I prepared to lose this round in public. Another pings, the reporter again with a link. Pre-report published, names withheld, seeking comment from leadership. The officer's radio crackled and changed his posture. He looked at the deacon with new calculation. The deacon's smile slipped like wet paint. Her mother read the alert on her screen. She looked between Lena and the cruiser and me. Something in her face softened and then hardened again. "I'm driving home," she announced and opened the door. The deacon reached for her elbow and missed. The officer returned with a notepad and questions. "Any footage of threats or stalking tonight?" I described the fake inspection and the wedged shoe. He wrote quickly and asked for the motel name. "Stay reachable," he added with a pointed look. We stepped back from the scene and regrouped. Lena's shoulders dropped while her eyes stayed fierce. "We publish the full set if they spin," she said. "Not the whole vault," I warned and hesitated. She nodded, though the fight burned bright. A new text from an unknown source arrived. This one included a screenshot of church group chat. "Plan B, move counseling records offsite tonight." Lena's jaw clenched as if taking a punch. "They're hiding evidence before the morning," she breathed. I opened a map and traced a route. 3 potential locations fit their pattern of secrecy. We picked the closest one and started moving. Each step felt like a dare with stakes rising. I didn't check the sky for approval. On the way, my phone rang again, restricted line. "Cease and desist attached," a crisp voice announced. "Immediate removal prevents further harm to the flock." I let the silence stretch into something uncomfortable. "Further harm ends when the recording ends," I replied. We kept walking while threats stacked up like crates. Every message sharpened our direction instead of blurring it. Lena looked at me and chose certainty over fear. "We finished this tonight," she said and didn't blink. I matched her pace and didn't look back. We cut across a service alley and reached the storage gate. Lena checked the street and touched my elbow once. A keypad blinked a pattern we didn't know yet. "Try the date on the group chat," she whispered. The lock clicked and I felt the window narrow. Inside smelled like dust and metal and risk. I counted doors and listened for footsteps that weren't ours. Unit 19 showed new scratches near the handle. "Fast or careful?" Lena asked with a thin smile. "Fast," I answered, because careful was a luxury now. I popped the latch and lifted the door halfway. A rolling cart waited with 3 plastic bins. Top bin held folders and a label maker. Middle bin hid a portable server wrapped in towels. Bottom bin contained drives with numbered tape strips. I pulled the server and found a plugged modem. "They plan to move tonight and wipe tomorrow," I said. Lena lifted her chin and passed me the drive. We powered it up and watched status lights blink. This was the heart he never thought we'd touch. Boot sequence crawled while I checked cabling twice. A login screen demanded credentials we did not have. Lena opened a compartment and found a sticky note. 5 characters and a hint I recognized. I typed it and almost laughed at the arrogance. The directory loaded and listed counseling archives. Years of recordings sorted by initials and dates. I felt the air go thin around our choices. "Take what proves the pattern and the minors," I said. "Leave anything that risks names we can't protect." We started replication and watched the bar creep. Every second stretched and threatened to snap. Bootsteps approached the corridor and stopped at the corner. Lena killed the light and I held the cable. Someone cleared a throat and checked a phone. 2 shadows crossed and kept going for now. I restarted the transfer and willed it not to freeze. Lena covered the modem with a spare towel. The van door slammed outside like a clock strike. We both flinched and then we finished the copy. I slid the drive into my sock again. The server fan spun down with a final sigh. We closed the unit and wiped our prints fast. As we stepped out, a familiar voice called. "Turn around, both of you." He stood with 2 deacons and a lawyer. No robe, no stage, just polished certainty. Lena's shoulders squared and her jaw locked. "Return stolen property and we forgive everything," he announced. My laugh came out dry and short like a cough. "Forgiveness isn't yours to barter," I answered without blinking. "You recorded people without consent for leverage." He lifted his palms as if soothing a child. "Counseling requires documentation for accountability," he replied. Lena looked at the bins and then at me. The lawyer produced a folder and a pen. Sign agreements and surrender devices right now. Or what? I asked, daring him to say it. You face charges for harassment and interference, he replied. Lena exhaled once and I heard steel in it. Headlights swept the row and stopped behind them. A second car parked across our escape route. Daniel stepped from the shadows near the fence. He lifted a phone already recording live video. Keep talking, he told the pastor without looking away. The lawyer paled, then squared his shoulders again. This is private property and privileged conversation. Public interest trumps your script, Daniel shot back. He panned slowly across faces and the bins. Where are your consent forms for minors? Silence sat heavy for one hard beat. The pastor smiled and tried compassion again. Let's de-escalate before rumors destroy families. Lena took one step forward and broke the spell. Rumors end when evidence breathes, she said, steady as iron. I pulled a small speaker from my jacket. A 10-second clip played with unmistakable voices. Joel prompting a scared child to repeat, I sinned. The lawyer lunged and I pocketed the device quickly. Daniel's camera caught the reach in crisp detail. Tires crunched at the far entrance and stopped. The cruiser from earlier glided into the lane. Same officer, new posture, clipboard out. Got another call about a disturbance, he announced. He saw the bins and connected dots out loud. Everyone keep still while I sort this, he said. The pastor smoothed his shirt and offered a smile. Officer, we are handling a sensitive church matter. The officer raised a palm and cut him off. I need to ask about consent and storage, he replied. The lawyer stepped in with a measured tone. These materials are protected under pastoral privilege. The officer nodded once and kept writing calmly. Privilege doesn't cover illegal recording of minors. He looked at Lena and then at me. Any reason to fear retaliation tonight? He asked. Lena lifted her arm and showed the bruised wrist. She attempted to enter our room by force, I added. The officer wrote, then turned toward the pastor. We're going to hold these bins for review. The lawyer protested and then swallowed it whole. The officer radioed a second unit to document. Daniel kept filming and added a timestamp verbally. I felt the ground tilt toward accountability at last. The pastor's eyes flickered like he'd lost his place. Her mother's car rolled up behind the cruiser. She stepped out slowly and scanned the scene. Her gaze landed on Lena and softened for once. I'm here if you want to come with me. Lena looked at me and then nodded once. I will after we sign these statements, she said. Her mother glanced at the pastor and flinched. She turned her back on him without a word. That small gesture did more than any sermon. The officer noticed and wrote another line. My phone vibrated with a banner from the outlet. They pushed the story with audio and expert commentary. I read the headline and felt my lungs expand. Daniel checked his screen and grinned with relief. Other stations just picked it up, he announced. The pastor tried one last paternal sigh. He told the officer he feared for his safety. He asked if we could all pray right here. Daniel laughed once and nearly dropped his phone. The officer shook his head and kept working. A volunteer appeared at the end of the row. He held a key ring and looked like a ghost. I was told to empty the safe, he muttered. The officer beckoned him forward without ceremony. The volunteer pointed to another unit near the fence. We followed as the volunteer unlocked the door. Inside stood a small rack with labeled drawers. Every drawer marked with dates from recent months. The officer photographed each label before touching anything. I felt vindication and dread share the same seat. Chain of custody begins now, the officer stated. He sealed the bins and tagged the rack. The pastor protested in calm, cultivated tones. His hands shook anyway and betrayed the mask. Lena watched those hands and finally breathed easier. Daniel pulled us aside and dropped his voice. Do not ride. Do with either car, he warned. Take my truck and follow at a distance. He pressed keys into my palm and squeezed once. Meet at the precinct side entrance. We slipped away while the officer coordinated inventory. I helped Lena into the truck and checked mirrors. Her mother nodded from her car and waited. The pastor stared at us with something like panic. For the first time, I felt taller than his stage. At the precinct, we gave recorded statements. Short and precise and tied to time stamps. The detective asked about threats from the motel. We showed screenshots and the hallway footage. He thanked us and said the warrants would follow. Outside the station, the night felt thinner. Lena leaned against the truck and closed her eyes. "Do you regret starting this?" she asked quietly. "Only that it took this long," I answered. We both knew we weren't finished yet. Her phone buzzed with a message from a clinic. Not an appointment, just a counselor offering options. She read it twice and looked up at me. "I want to go on my terms," she said. No tremor, no apology, just choice. We drove to Daniel's place to crash a while. No talking, just planning with light touches. He spread a map and marked 3 future risks. Donor lists, volunteer lists, backup caches. We divided tasks like we'd done this for years. Morning crawled into view with sirens on television. A news anchor read lines about unauthorized recordings. They mentioned minors and consent and retained evidence. A statement from leadership scrolled across the bottom. Administrative leave pending review, it read, not triumphant. Comment sections churned and then pivoted to survivors. We watched more girls add their initials to a form. A hotline number flashed and stayed on screen. Lena rubbed her forehead and exhaled slowly. "Maybe we broke the right thing," she murmured. My inbox flooded with messages from strangers. Some grateful, some furious, some terrified of fallout. I answered only those who asked for help. I sent the hotline and the case number. Everything else could drown in its own noise. The detective called before noon with one update. We secured additional drives from a volunteer. He asked if we would testify if needed. I looked at Lena and she nodded once. "Put us on the list," I told him. By late afternoon, the resignation landed online. No apology, just strategic sorrow and vague sorrow. The board distanced itself and promised reform soon. Daniel rolled his eyes and muted the television. Lena stared at the wall and didn't blink. Her mother knocked on the door and waited. Daniel opened and stepped aside without speaking. She entered with careful movements like a truce. "I was wrong to trust him over you." The room held that line like a fragile cup. Lena walked to her and opened her arms. They held each other and didn't say more. When they let go, both stood straighter than before. "I'm going with you to the clinic," her mother said. Lena nodded and looked back at me. "You coming?" she asked, hand already reaching. "Front row," I answered, and I meant forever. We left the house and stepped into clean air. My chest felt light and heavy at once. That's how change arrives, sharp and honest. At the curb I paused and looked back once. Daniel lifted a thumb and then made a call. He moved into the next task without ceremony. We were a chain now, not a whisper. And the door that used to scare me stood open.